Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester, and I'm on Twitter at BobbyFantasyPro, joined as always by Mike Tagliere. He's on Twitter at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, there's not much news, so I think we're just going to do a Dynasty Startup mock today. Is that the plan?
Yeah, right. I'm in no mental place to do a mock against you and potentially lose. The Odell Beckham deal last night, there's so much going on, and I know I'm jumping around here, but I was so hyped up and things were happening in the NFL, and I tried going to bed last night at about 10:30, 11 o'clock. Couldn't fall asleep. I'm laying there, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, I look at my clock, and it's 12:45 in the morning. And I look at my phone. Le'Veon Bell has signed with the Jets, and it's like, oh my god! So I actually got up, wrote an article on Le'Veon Bell. I've only had 3 hours sleep because we're recording this at 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's just it's been a whirlwind of things going on. So if I sound a little bit different today, you'll know why.
It's been a lot of fun, though, right?
It has. It really has. It's just it's crazy to try and keep up with everything that's happening. But I know you're going to do a good job keeping me on track. Well,
thanks, man. Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this. In fact, I've been holding off on talking about anything free agency because I wanted to save all of our takes for each other on the podcast. And Tags, when we planned this episode, we figured there would be a handful of news items to cover since we're recording early Wednesday morning. So if anything breaks between now and the time the show gets published, it's because we were recording Wednesday morning, so sorry we missed it. We'll get to it the next show. And free agency starts on Wednesday morning, so we didn't think there'd be much. And then we'd do another show when everything else came out. Now, Tags, I'm pretty sure our producer is still sleeping because he's on the West Coast, right? So we're just going to have to decide this right now. We usually go an hour on these pods. There is so much to talk about. You up for an additional 20, 30 bonus minutes?
Definitely. I mean, I could talk football all day long if they allowed me to. But unfortunately, we know that everybody's got a shorter commute than usually an hour and a half. So
stretch it out into 2 days. Make it 2 shows, basically.
Yeah, that's definitely possible.
I just don't want to rush through anything. And that's really what it comes down to. And maybe we'll finish in about an hour, but I just don't imagine that'll be the case. So let's jump right into it. First, though, I want to talk a little about PristineAuction.com. We're going to be giving away an Amari Cooper signed helmet, courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction. But the contest ends on Friday night, so get your entries in now. To enter the contest, head on over to FantasyPros.com/contest for more details. It only takes 30 seconds to enter. There's always values on Pristine Auction. I was looking at Patrick Mahomes yesterday because, really, I don't think he's going to be the greatest of all time, but he does have a chance to be. And when you get the greatest of all time helmet, we're talking Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, $1,000, maybe more, right? I saw Patrick Mahomes go for $240 yesterday. That could end up being the deal of a lifetime.
Yeah, no, the quarterback ones are definitely the ones that typically go up in price quite a bit when you have star power. So I'm surprised that it was that low for Mahomes.
Yeah, it was a nice looking helmet as well. And if you want to go on the cheaper end, you can get some full-size helmets for about $70, $80, $90, even on some good players. I even saw a Lawrence Taylor signed New York Giants jersey, went for $73. That was an absolute steal. And I'm a baseball guy as well. I almost got the best third baseman in MLB history, Brooks Robinson, a signed baseball from him for $35 yesterday. I just missed out. That was about as high as I was willing to go. But that one's probably worth about $70. There's always values on Pristine Auction. Everything's guaranteed from only the most authentic sources. And it's just awesome. They have so many things to choose from, hundreds of items that end every single day in auction. Tags, I love Pristine Auction.
Absolutely, man.
And Pristine Auction is Pristine. All right, man, so let's get into this with the most important news. Adam Humphries signing with the Titans. I'm just kidding. Let's start right at the top, man. Odell Beckham traded for a first, a second, and Jabril Peppers.
It was actually a first and a third.
Oh, I didn't see that changed.
Yeah, so no. The reason why people got confused with that one is because it was a first round pick, their second, third round pick. So it depends on how you read it because the Browns had 2 picks. I believe one was from the Patriots in the third round. So they traded away their second, third round pick and Jabril Peppers. So I feel like the Giants personally, I feel like they got hosed in the deal. It's not to say that,
Well, yeah.
You're giving away an all-time great player and you're doing it for one first. Jabril Peppers, I really don't even know where they're going to play him, to be honest with you, because looking at the signings that have taken place, they signed Antoine Bethea to a contract. He plays strong safety. Jabril Peppers is a better strong safety. I don't...
Peppers could play linebacker, man.
Yeah, well, technically.
Like, who was it? Mark Barron, you look at him, he used to be a safety. They moved him to linebacker, and he was one of the best in the league.
Yeah, I don't know what the Giants' plans are. I don't think many people understand what's going on with the Giants right now. You know, this is a team that, you know, when you draft Saquon Barkley at number 2, you figure it's a team that they're going to go for it to win. And it's like trading away Odell Beckham's not really going to help that. They traded away Olivier Vernon as well. So it's like, I don't know.
They lost Landon Collins. They traded Snacks Harrison last year, and they kept Eli Manning. You know, here's the thing. I think that Saquon Barkley was drafted just so they could keep butts in the seats when they're going through this rebuild. I wish they would have got more for Beckham, but you know what? If you're going to do a rebuild, you do it all the way. And I'm looking at it like this. If you're a Giants fan, there is a little bit of silver lining, because think of it this way. You're not just getting the first, the third, and Jabril Peppers. You're getting probably a 20-30% increased chance at getting Tua number 1 overall next year.
Yeah, and that's where I'm wondering. They've been saying all along that they're going to stick with Eli Manning for this year, and it's like, are they doing that just to take a quarterback next year? Are they going to pass on another one here again at 6 this year, at 17, because now they have 2 of the top 17 picks? It seems to be like,
if they don't, they're stupid, because they're going to be number 1 next year.
They're wasting Saquon Barkley's career. They are wasting it. And like the prime of his career where he's playing the best, and they're throwing it away. I know that they traded for Kevin Zeitler, and he's a solid offensive guard, and I love the signing.
Maybe the best.
But what I'm saying is, this team is not going to be in a position to compete for a Super Bowl. And that's, in the end, if you were taking Saquon Barkley, that's why you should have been taking him. I am so frustrated by this move, because it's common sense, people. It's common sense. And I don't know what the Giants are doing here. So unfortunately, I don't think it helps Saquon Barkley. I don't think the offense becomes better without Odell Beckham. So therefore, if you're on a lower scoring offense, I think it's going to take away some of the scoring appeal for Saquon, but he does create in his own. He's still a top 3 running back, hands down easy. But the bigger question is here, you know, people are talking about what it means for Evan Ingram. And obviously that's going to mean good things for him, but how big of a step forward do you anticipate Sterling Shepard taking because of this?
I think Sterling Shepard benefited from being on the opposite side of Odell Beckham. Now, he's going to get more targets, so I don't think his fantasy value is going to decrease. It might even increase a little bit, because volume is king. With that said, I think that, with him being featured, maybe if they keep him in the slot, it'll be different, because slot cornerbacks aren't as talented. But if they move him outside, it's going to be a bummer.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Juju Smith-Schuster thing that I talked about on the emergency podcast I did over the weekend, in that, you know, Sterling Shepard has been a slot receiver. He's actually been more slot than Juju, where like you're seeing Sterling Shepard, 75+% of the time in the slot. So I have to think that the Giants are going to be drafting a wide receiver, if not 2 of them. It's a very good wide receiver draft. So if there's one thing that you could take away from this trade as a Giants fan, and you're upset about them losing Beckham, is that it is a good draft to find wide receivers. And, I would imagine at number 17, that's where I think we could find one, because at number 6, there's still a lot of great defensive players on the board, and I don't know if they could pass on those. But at 17, maybe DK Metcalf falls to them. Maybe they look at AJ Brown to be the Odell Beckham replacement. There's a lot of good wide receivers on the board.
None of these wide receivers are long-term starting wide receivers in this league. In this draft, I don't think so. I watched them all. I'm not impressed.
Wow, there's a lot of people that think this is the deepest wide receiver class of all time. I'm not willing to say that. I think that there's players who do a lot of things well, and I think that if they fall into the right place, I believe they can be long-term starters. It's just a matter of what do they do for the team. Like do they fall into the right situation? Like, one of the guys we're going to talk about, I'm sure today, is John Brown falling into Josh Allen and the Bills situation, and what that means for his fantasy output. Because think about this for a second. If Odell Beckham had been drafted to the Patriots, if he had been drafted to the Packers, do you think that those teams would have moved on from him? My biggest thing with Beckham, and the reason that I do believe that when I say all-time great, is because you look at what he's done with Eli Manning. A guy that is considered, he was considered an average quarterback for a large portion of his career.
He's bottom 5 in the NFL the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is just like Odell Beckham has performed with him, like elite territory, like elite level production.
Second most receiving yards per game in NFL history.
Yeah, and right behind Julio Jones, my guy. But Beckham hasn't even he hasn't reached elite level, targets. You have guys like Julio, you have guys like Antonio Brown reaching, that 180 to 200 target mark. Odell Beckham has never seen more than, I think it's 163 or 168 targets.
It would help if he stayed healthy, but yeah, you're right.
That is part of the problem. But, knowing he's going to play with Baker Mayfield, one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the league right now, Baker Mayfield threw 27 touchdowns in his rookie season, despite starting only 13 games. Eli Manning without Odell Beckham, he only reached 27 touchdowns 3 times in his career before Odell Beckham, and it definitely wasn't his rookie year. So it's like, Baker Mayfield is on the right track here. Odell Beckham going there, it hurts Jarvis Landry more than anything, because I was breaking down that target share in an article I wrote yesterday, basically like why you should be a little skeptical of the targets to go around. I don't think Beckham and Jarvis Landry can each, see 140, 150 targets. I think it's going to be one or the other seeing 150 with the other one around maybe 110.
You think Brashard Perriman's going to steal our Jarvis Landry's targets?
Well, Perriman, did you hear about that? So Perriman, this is a funny story. Brashard Perriman signed a 1-year deal for $4 million with the Browns yesterday. It was a verbal contract. He was going to come in and sign. After the Beckham trade, he said he wanted out. He did not want to be on the team anymore. They granted that for him, and he actually signed with Tampa Bay last night for a 1-year deal.
I did not catch that. That's really good of them to do that, and good for Perriman.
I agree. And it's like, he's buried, and now this hurts Antonio Callaway. If you're playing dynasty leagues, Antonio Callaway took a major hit last night. It's like, now he's the clear cut number 3 wide receiver. And we know number 3 wide receivers typically don't see any more than like 70 targets a year. So he's just buried on the depth chart right now.
So Tags, Odell Beckham, is he the number 1 dynasty asset at all positions right now?
Yes. He was close before this, and that's why I say when he performed the way he did with Eli Manning, Bobby, I put the stat yesterday on Twitter. I do an article every year. It's called Boom Bust and Everything in Between. And basically what it does is it highlights in a different way how players have performed compared to their peers. Odell Beckham, it breaks it down into wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, boom bust categories. Odell Beckham has finished as a wide receiver 1 in 49% of his games throughout his career.
That's unbelievable. Like, number 1 receivers are usually half that.
Julio Jones is the closest to him. Okay, remember, Odell Beckham, 49% of his games. Julio Jones is the closest, 40% for his career. Odell Beckham has scored 25 plus PPR points in 34% of his games.
That is just stupid.
It's ridiculous to know what he's done in the short time. And I understand it's only a 5-year sample size, but that's a relatively big one. Odell Beckham is a stud. He is fantastic. And going to play with Baker Mayfield in Freddie Kitchens' offense, which looked really good down the stretch, I'm excited. I don't know if we can say that Odell Beckham is going to totally, finish as the number 1 wide receiver this year. I don't know if we can say that because he is going to a new offense. He is playing with a new quarterback.
I'm drafting him like it.
Yeah, I think he is worth a late first-round pick. That's where I would draft him. And in best ball leagues, I've done a few drafts recently, and I was getting Odell Beckham at the end of the 2nd round, beginning of the 3rd, and it was stealing.
So you're taking Devontae Adams over Beckham still?
That's where it's really close. I think I probably would take Devontae Adams just because of there's not as many question marks. I think Green Bay is going to be a lot more pass heavy than Cleveland is. And don't forget, the Browns have gotten better on defense too. Olivier Vernon, they added him. They added Sheldon Richardson. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to like about this Browns team, but I think that
they got Earl Thomas too, right?
They haven't signed Earl Thomas yet, but they're in talks that they believe that they can sign him, and that it seems like things are trending that way. So this Browns team...
Oh, you forgot Kareem Hunt too. They got Kareem Hunt behind Nick Chubb. They still have Duke Johnson.
Mm-hmm. And Duke Johnson could be a tradable asset. They could acquire more draft picks if they trade him away, which seems probably likely at some point.
The team is loaded, man. Imagine if they still had Josh Gordon too.
Yeah, they just released him. But the thing is, he'd be out of the league right now anyway, so it doesn't really...
Well, you know what I'm saying, if he was clean.
For sure. Yeah. Josh Gordon, Odell Beckham, and Jarvis Landry as your top 3 wide receivers, that'd be pretty nice. But
Cleveland has suffered long enough, man. I'll tell you what, Tags. My very first takeaway from this trade was, I'm just so pumped for Cleveland fans. This is awesome for them. I think that they are a surefire playoff team, and I think they probably have the best roster in the AFC. I'm not saying they're the favorites to make the Super Bowl or anything like that. I would probably put them number 3 right now behind the Patriots and the Chiefs in that order. But the Browns are right there, man. They could win a Super Bowl this year, and I think they will win one in the next 5 or 6 years.
I think we talked about this on a podcast a few weeks back. Before all this took place, I actually said, like, we did this thing for Betting Pros, our other site that we're doing, kind of like Fantasy Pros, but on the betting side of things, where it was like, who's the best long shot to win the Super Bowl? I felt like the Browns, because I think at that time they were like 35-1 to win the Super Bowl. And I felt like they had a really, really talented roster. I feel like they were up and coming, that people are unsuspecting. The AFC North is going through a lot of changes, and they continue to go through a lot of changes with Baltimore and Pittsburgh. So I felt like it was an opportunity for Cleveland. And now it's hard not to pick them to win that AFC North. They're going to be in the playoffs, and it's a matter of, can they get over the hump of some of those teams like the Chiefs, like the Patriots.
Yeah, and the Ravens dismantled their team. Obviously, the Steelers are falling apart with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown leaving, and they've still got some options, but I don't think Big Ben is good enough to carry them to the playoffs anymore. So, yeah, I think it's the Browns' division to lose, absolutely. Let's move on over and talk about the Steelers, where Antonio Brown left. You already did a podcast on this, so, I mean, you can chime in a little bit if you want. Tags, you slept through the Antonio Brown to the Bills era, which was just so much fun. I had him at wide receiver 7. When he went to the Bills, I dropped him in wide receiver 10. Now that he's with the Raiders, I've got him up at wide receiver 8 again. I don't feel especially excited about him. Obviously, Derek Carr is not the best quarterback in the world, but he's a lot better than Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and I think he's on a shorter leash, where it's like, if he doesn't get it done this year, I believe they do move on from him, and we do have some
They might even draft a rookie in the first round anyway.
I don't think so. I know that some people are saying that, but I don't think so. I still think there's a lot of holes in this team, and I think they're trying to give Derek Carr his opportunity. I feel like it's a Marcus Mariota thing, where it's like they're going to give him weapons, and we're going to say, we've given you everything you've wanted that you would need to succeed, and now you need to prove it. Otherwise, we need to move on. So,
well, they've got 2 great offensive tackles now. Their offensive line has been a train wreck. He's got the weapons, and Derek Carr's been playing hurt. If we get a healthy season out of him, I remember, what was he, the number 4 fantasy quarterback 3 years ago?
Oh, but it was fueled by a few big performances. Like, he was never really consistent, and that was my issue with Derek Carr, is that a few big games did prop up. There was one game against Tampa Bay, I remember. It was like almost a 500-yard game, 5 touchdowns or something like that, and it propped up his numbers quite a bit. But Trent Brown, I think he was overpaid. I know they signed him as their left tackle now, and they're going to move Colton Miller over to the right side. They did trade away Osemele, their Pro Bowl guard, their longtime Pro Bowl guard, who had a bad year in 2018. But I still don't like this offensive line very much. I feel like Trent Brown is a little bit overrated. I think offensive tackles that come from the Patriots, people just assume that they're going to walk in and play the exact same as they did with the Patriots, and it unfortunately just doesn't happen a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's kind of like hitters with the Rockies when they leave and everyone thinks they're still going to bat .330 with 30 homers. Well, no, it's because they were playing in Coors Field. That's for you baseball fans out there. Everyone else is probably annoyed, so sorry. All right, man, let's jump on over and talk about Le'Veon Bell to the Jets. I was thinking we were going to go into this show with him still not signing. It looked pretty obvious he was going to sign with the Jets. How does he fit?
So Le'Veon Bell, my concern is that, people are going to talk about, you take the guaranteed touches and this and that. But my issue here has to do with the offense that's in place now. And it's Adam Gase. I walked downstairs and I started writing this article 2:00 in the morning. And Adam Gase's offense, here are the ranks in plays per game as in the 3 years as a head coach. In 2018, the Dolphins were 32nd in plays, last in the league. 2017, they were 22nd, so still almost bottom 10. 2016, 32nd, dead last. So he's been dead last in plays per game in 2 of the last 3 years. That's not great for fantasy production, no matter what position you play. So that's why when you look at the Dolphins over the last 3 years, there hasn't been much to talk about from a fantasy perspective. They've also only scored 10 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 years. Frank Gore is good. Kenyon Drake is good. The offensive line in Miami may not be great, but the Jets' offensive line is putrid. Okay, Le'Veon Bell was able to run behind a Pittsburgh offensive line for his entire career that was one of the best offensive lines in football. They get a push up front. They allow him to be patient. He sits back. People praise Le'Veon Bell for his patience. Behind the Jets' offensive line, that will not happen. They will not praise him for patience. They will say, get downhill, get in between the guards, push, at least get a couple yards and stop losing yardage. He's going to lose yardage quite a bit behind this offensive line. Not only were they were not good to begin with, but they just lost Spencer Long and James Carpenter. I don't know what the Jets are doing. They didn't sign any of these big name offensive linemen in free agency. There's still a couple.
Same thing as the Giants, man. They're just trying to get butts in the seats. They know they're not going to win. You get Le'Veon Bell, people show up.
I don't know, man. They spent money on C.J. Mosley. They spent money on Jamison Crowder. They spent money on Le'Veon Bell. They actually did spend money on Anthony Barr, but he ended up going back to the Vikings. But that's what I'm saying. They're spending money, and they do believe they're closer than other people do. But I think that in the trenches is where it hurts the most. And this is where I have my concerns with Le'Veon. So not only are plays per game, the offensive production in Gase's offense in general, the offensive line, but then you start thinking about target share. Okay. Like, I don't know where the targets are going to come from. Jamison Crowder occupies that short area of the field. He's not a guy that you're going to target over 10 yards down the field. So he's going to operate over the middle of the field. And
that screws Quincy Enunwa, doesn't it? Because that was Enunwa's job. Now you know he's going to be outside and he's pretty much worthless out there.
Enunwa has dropped so far in my dynasty rankings. It's not funny. Honestly, he's actually borderline droppable because he didn't perform on the perimeter. Jamison Crowder, if there's anything we've taken away from, Sam Darnold's rookie year, it's that he did really like the slot receiver. Even when they moved over to Jermaine Kearse, he was targeting him when he was Kearse didn't do much with those targets. But adding Jamison Crowder means that they understand how valuable that position is to Sam Darnold, and Adam Gase has used the slot receiver quite a bit in his offense. So
Crowder's a good one too. When he's healthy, I think he's about as good as Julian Edelman. The difference is Julian Edelman's with Tom Brady, and I know some of you Patriots fans are going to say, "Oh no, he's a Hall of Famer. Jamison Crowder's just a borderline player." Watch the tape, man. I'm telling you, Jamison Crowder is every bit as good as Julian Edelman.
Jamison Crowder's really good. I don't think he's as versatile as Julian Edelman. Edelman can play anywhere on the field. He's a slot heavy receiver, but he can play on the perimeter, whereas Crowder is slot only. Like, he can't play on the perimeter. So it's like he's kind of locked into that role. They have Robbie Anderson to stretch the field. They have Quincy Enunwa can play somewhat of a possession role, but the Jets, I don't know if they're a team that's going to throw the ball 600 times. And it's like when you start talking about those plays per game under Adam Gase, like the Dolphins last year, I'm going to pull it up. So Miami threw the ball 452 times last year. That's pathetic. Like they ran an average of 54.9 plays per game. Le'Veon Bell, in his time with the Steelers, his career average is 24.9 touches per game. That is elite volume you are not going to find in any other offense, especially one that runs 54 plays per game. It's the first year in the offense. Now, Le'Veon Bell's going to get touches. You don't bring a guy in for this much money and not give him touches. But, Bobby, we've talked about this. This reminds me so much of David Johnson last year. He was playing behind a bad offensive line. He was with a team that had a young quarterback. He was with a team that had a new head coach. And, granted, Adam Gase is a better offensive mind than Steve Wilkes in that staff that they had in Arizona.
He's a big weirdo, but yeah, he's smart.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't think he's that great as a head coach. I feel like he's almost like another Hugh Jackson, where it's like he was better as an offensive coordinator than he is as a head coach. And for whatever reason, he keeps bringing Dowell Loggins wherever he goes, and Dowell Loggins isn't helping anything. So when you're drafting a player in the first round, which is where Le'Veon Bell's going to go.
That's so stupid. Are you serious?
Or even in the first two rounds, this is where you take as little risk as possible. When we talk about the offensive line, the plays per game, the offense not being a top 10 scoring unit, Le'Veon Bell's upside is severely capped in this offense. Therefore, I don't think he's worth a top 15 pick. I mean, if he falls to the end of the second round, fine, whatever. I guess. But I'm not excited because I don't believe he offers you top 5 running back upside.
I've got him RB13, man. I'm taking him right around Leonard Fournette, David Johnson, Nick Chubb I've still got above him. Aaron Jones, we're going to talk about this later. I think he is a big winner from yesterday. James Conner, and now he's the lone back in Pittsburgh. Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon. I'd take all those guys over Le'Veon Bell right now. He's an end of the second round pick for me. You talk about, these guys with a young quarterback, awful offensive line. How about Todd Gurley in 2016 when he had 3.2 yards per carry? He had 278 rushing attempts, 885 yards. He even got 58 targets. Didn't do much with him because the Rams were just terrible. That's going to be Le'Veon Bell this year. Yeah, he's going to get the volume, but here's the thing. Are you ready for the narrative where everyone's going to say, well, Le'Veon Bell sat out a year and now he's terrible? Well, no, he's not terrible. Just like Todd Gurley wasn't terrible in 2016. He's just with an awful team, and that matters.
It does matter. It absolutely matters. Coaching matters. And I tell people this all the time. And there's a lot of people that are bringing up the point of Adam Gase when he was the offensive coordinator for the Bears with Matt Forte. And then they go back to Denver when he was the offensive coordinator and no Sean Moreno. Again, if we go back to Hugh Jackson as an offensive coordinator, he was fantastic. Okay. He was ruined when he became a head coach. And I believe the same thing happened to Adam Gase. I don't know why the Jets hired him as their coach. I really don't. And on top of all of this, I've just talked about a lot of concerns about Le'Veon Bell. Are we really going to pretend that Adam Gase isn't a concern? Do you not remember what happened to Jay Ajayi in Miami?
And Kenyon Drake didn't even start.
Adam Gase has things out for certain players. And I know some people are like, okay, you're stretching this, Mike. No, I'm not. Like, I watch enough football to understand, like, what happens with certain players. If Adam Gase, if you fall on his bad side, like someone like Devontae Parker, like Jay Ajayi.
Was he the one that trashed Jay Cutler?
Well, no, he liked Cutler from his days in Chicago. But, like...
Somebody on the Bears coaching staff, I don't remember who it was, just laid into Jay Cutler in the media.
Can't remember who it was. I tuned out the Bears for a lot of that portion. The thing is like, Adam Gase is a concern. He's a concern for your fantasy team. He's a concern for the Jets as a whole. Like, it's almost like he holds grudges, and if you get in his bad side, it's like he's going to put you in this box. I don't think the Jets ownership is going to allow him to do that with Le'Veon Bell, because they obviously just paid him.
If anyone gets on his bad side, it's gotta be Bell, right?
That's the thing, is Bell is we obviously know that Bell is not a regular dude. He's not. Okay. Like, he just sat out a year and missed out on $15 million. I'm just saying, there's so many risks with him. There is no way in heck that you should be investing a first round pick. And if you want to take him in the second round, I'm with you, Bobby, in the fact that I think he's a late second round pick. I'm going to have him right around that RB8 to RB10 area. I think he's like fine. It's kind of like David Johnson last year, honestly. And I know people don't want to hear that, but like, the parallels are definitely there.
So what's the difference between Bell and Johnson this year?
There's not many differences. I guess Cliff Kingsbury, I guess you could just hope that his offense, it's more air raid. I have more confidence in Kingsbury's offense right now than I do in Adam Gase's offense.
Who else do you have Bell ahead of? Leonard Fournette?
It would depend on the scoring settings. If it was a standard scoring, I might side Fournette there. It's really close, though. Like, Fournette's injury concerns are real, but if I knew he was going to be healthy, I mean, I don't think the signing of Nick Foles helps Leonard Fournette. So there's a lot of, there are some concerns with Fournette for sure, but it's in that territory where it's like those guys are guaranteed 20 touches a game when they're healthy. So that's why they're in that territory. The issue is that I don't think either of them are offering you top 5 upside at this point.
Okay, so Le'Veon Bell or Aaron Jones?
I'll take Bell because I know that's a guaranteed workload. So Matt LaFleur has been hinting that Green Bay will use somewhat of a committee between Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Whether it's right or wrong, I can't answer that. I do think that Aaron Jones separates himself from the field a little bit there, but at the same time, it seems like it's another situation that you're going to have to be concerned about it every week. Like, if Jamal Williams has a good week, all of a sudden, does that mean that Aaron Jones is now just a timeshare running back? I don't want to worry about that when I'm taking a running back with a top 10.
Fair. Yeah, that makes sense, man. That's not going to happen with Le'Veon Bell, Leonard Fournette, David Johnson, but, I'm really excited about what the Packers did yesterday. They spent some money, man. Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, Adrian Amos all went to the Packers. This defense is going to be a lot better. I think Aaron Jones, whoever the running back is in Green Bay, is going to get a lot more work because they're going to be playing up all season.
They have a pass rush now, but that secondary hasn't lived up to their draft stock that they paid in those guys. Like, I feel like Green Bay definitely got better as a team over the last 24 hours. They definitely did. Adrian Amos, Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith, it's all great for them. They did cut Nick Perry. The pass rush is going to be better. Amos, will he pair well with Tramon Williams? Are they going to draft a free safety? I just feel like the secondary of Kevin King, he's underperformed. Josh Jackson didn't look great as a rookie. J.R. Alexander is good, but I feel like that unit, like the linebackers and the entire secondary, just hasn't really come together as one. And now there's more moving parts. So I still think that the Packers are an interesting bet. If you want to take them to win the Super Bowl, obviously when you have an elite quarterback, it's always a chance for them to go there, and Rodgers has been there before. So
yeah, I've got them as the favorites in the NFC right now after what happened yesterday.
I still say the Saints are definitely my favorite in the NFC, but I'd say the Packers are a better team than most believe.
I'm a little bit worried about the Rams. Jumping off base here, but I don't have them in my top 2 in the NFC. Yeah, they went and signed Eric Weddle, but they lost Roger Saffold to the Titans. Andre Whitworth is getting old. I think this offensive line might have some trouble this year.
Yeah, the Rams, it really depends on how they address this in the draft. Like, they need linebacker help. They're going to lose Ndamukong Suh. It seems like they're not going to be bringing him back. So getting somebody back alongside Aaron Donald is important. The defense is what is going to hold them back. The Todd Gurley knee issues, I'm not as concerned as everybody else about them.
What was it? What did it come out as? Tendinitis or something like that?
Yeah, it's arthritis in his knee.
Yeah, which hurts, but you can play through that.
We all have arthritis. Literally from the day we're born, we're not 100% anymore. Are they going to limit his workload a little bit? Maybe. They take 2 touches a game away from him, but it's still a high scoring offense. He's still utilized in the passing game. I think the hate on Todd Gurley has gone a little bit overboard. I'd still take him with a top 6 pick.
People are not taking him in the top 6? I've got him number 3 still.
He fell in a best ball draft the other day I was in. He fell to 1-8.
What?
Yep.
Did you take him?
I think Brad Evans, our friend of the show, Brad Evans from Yahoo, he said that he doesn't even have Todd Gurley in his top 10 picks for 2019.
Oh, man. We need to fight him.
Oh, you don't want to fight Brad when he's all hopped up on tequila.
I saw a video of Brad from like 10 years ago when he had a lot of hair, and it was really cool, funky hair, man. Brad is an awesome dude.
I love Brad. He's the best.
Yep, he's a lot of fun. All right, let's keep moving on with the offensive skill position players. You talked about Nick Foles going to the Jags, and you don't think this helps Leonard Fournette. Now, we did quick Instagram hits, and I agreed with you. Why don't you tell us why, though?
I just feel like this is a team that, with the offense that they have in place, like there's Nick Foles with the Eagles. Did he have stints where he played exceptionally well? Yes, he did. He also had Doug Peterson as his head coach, and I know that people are, John DeFilippo, they're going to do all these comparisons and say, oh, he's bringing that offense. Well, he didn't really do it for the Vikings, did he? So it's like, you start looking at all this stuff and it's like, I don't know why people are all of a sudden believing that Nick Foles is this franchise quarterback that you should pay $22 million a year for. It wasn't like as big as a deal as I thought that they were going to give Nick Foles, but apparently the Jags were the only bidders on him, that nobody else was in on Nick Foles. And that kind of tells you something, right? It reminds me of the Bears a couple of years ago with Mike Glennon, and I didn't like the signing of Glennon when that happened. So many people said that, oh, he's the best quarterback in free agency. He's better than the Bears have had. It was a joke, and it was a terrible signing, and the Bears paid for it. So I think this is another thing where the Jags are going to pay for it. Nick Foles is very immobile. He offers you nothing with his legs. That offensive line there is not great. I know Cam Robinson was hurt last year. I know they had a couple injuries, other injuries up front with Andrew Norwell and whatnot, but I think they're built to be more of a run-heavy team. I would have preferred to see someone like Tyrod Taylor be there because he would provide an additional rushing threat to the defense, whereas Nick Foles, it's like, it's either going to hand it off or he's going to be standing there in the pocket. It's like, go and get him. And while with the Eagles, Nick Foles had, he had Alshon Jeffrey. He had that guy that can go up and win those 50-50 battles. In Jacksonville, DJ Chark is not that guy. Okay. D.D. Westbrook is not that guy. They don't have a tight end. Like they legit don't have a tight end like on the roster. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, he's a free agent. James O'Shaughnessy, free agent. They don't have a tight end. So I'm guessing they're probably going to draft one. We know what rookie tight ends.
It's a great tight end draft. Maybe the best I've ever seen.
It is. But the thing is rookie tight ends, we know not to expect too much from them. So it's like, where is this help coming from with Nick Foles? They're going to draft a wide receiver, I would assume, because the big it's not a good wide receiver free agent class.
And they're losing Dante Moncrief, who was their number one, which is not good.
And he's like the bigger bodied receiver, even though he's not massive or anything. He doesn't play like giant. But Nick Foles, I mean, guys, we saw Nick Foles outside of the Doug Peterson offense recently when he played with Jeff Fisher. I'm not saying that this is the Jeff Fisher offense, but it definitely didn't look very good last year. I don't like the spot. I think Nick Foles is in a position to fail. Do I think that Nick Foles can be a competent NFL quarterback? I do. But it takes a certain coach and a certain offense for that to work, and I just don't believe Jacksonville can do it for him.
Tags, I'm a Jags fan, and I love Nick Foles. I'm really excited to root for him. With that said, I don't see much of a difference between him and Blake Bortles. And I know that's going to turn a lot of people's heads and say, okay, he's just being hyperbolic. No, look at them. Last 28 starts for Nick Foles, that's over 4 seasons. And last 28 starts for Blake Bortles, that's over 2 seasons. 2.6% interception rate for Blake Bortles. 2.6% interception rate for Nick Foles. 6.1 adjusted yards per pass attempt for Nick Foles. 6.5 for Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles has legs. This offensive line is horrible. Philadelphia had a good offensive line, and that's what Nick Foles did there. I don't really know if this is much of an upgrade. And this is coming from someone who likes Nick Foles, but it's just, as a Jags fan, I think this is a horrible move. I don't think they go forward.
That's where I'm at. And that's what I think I wanted people to take away. It's not that I hate Nick Foles. I don't. Like, yes, he beat the Bears. Guys, I don't hold grudges in football. I really don't. Nick Foles, like I said, he played phenomenal down the stretch. He was as clutch as they came when they won that Super Bowl. Like, he stepped up in ways that I didn't think he was possible of doing. But did you guys, I think people forgot about what he looked like at the start of even the 2018 season. People were like, what is this guy? Like, why did we franchise tag him? Like, what is happening? He looked horrible. I think there's stretches throughout Foles' career where he looks good. I think there's stretches that he looks really, 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 really bad. Like, especially during his time with the Rams. And that's where it all comes down to. I think it comes down to the offense around him, what you surround him with, and how you call plays. And I'm just not confident in the Jaguars staff to make that happen.
I can't believe I almost let this slip by me. So, Blake Bortles has a better touchdown percentage than Nick Foles in those 28 games, a better quarterback rate, and more yards per game. I think that, the Super Bowl is just clouding everyone's memory of who Nick Foles is.
I'm not even going to go down this rabbit hole. I know it's going to end poorly for me. I know people are going to come down on us for saying that stuff. But like I said, I could be wrong, and I hope that he proves me wrong. But I don't like the signing at all.
If you're mad at me or Mike Tagliere for the Nick Foles take, you can tweet Mike at Mike Tagliere NFL. I'm too busy with baseball stuff. Tags can handle your Nick Foles trolling. All right, man, let's talk about it. John Brown to the Bills.
This is the least exciting.
You love John Brown. You hate Josh Allen. How do you feel about this, Tags?
I feel terrible about it. I've broken up with John Brown. I let him know that I still love him and I still care about him. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. But I'm done in terms of like what I expect from a fantasy perspective. Looking at the parallels to this. So John Brown, let me just say this. John Brown is extremely talented.
He could have been so good with the Packers or any of these teams, but the Bills.
Well, that's the thing, is that I wrote this in the profile. I said that in the end, Brown chose money to provide for his family over a stable opportunity and a chance at a championship. And I can't fault him for doing that because he's the only one who can and should make that decision. But it's our job to talk about it from a fantasy perspective. So John Brown was the number 11 fantasy wide receiver through 7 games with Joe Flacco last year. He posted 558 yards and 4 touchdowns in those first 7 games. Unfortunately, Flacco was hurt. Lamar Jackson took over as the starter. Over the 7 games with Lamar Jackson, John Brown, 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's it. Okay. The Ravens with Jackson under center averaged 22.6 passing attempts per game. Lamar Jackson, by the way, completed 58% of his attempts. That was 51st among 69 quarterbacks who threw a pass in 2018. Okay. That's bad, but let's go to Josh Allen now. Josh Allen completed just 52.8% of his passes. He ranked 58th among 69 quarterbacks. The Bills averaged just 26.7 pass attempts when Josh Allen was the starter in 2018, which is not far off the mark where he was with Lamar Jackson. So when we talk about this, does Josh Allen have a massive arm, a better arm than Lamar Jackson? Abso-friggin-lutely. Yes, Josh Allen has one of the best arms in the NFL. Like, he can throw the ball. I believe he could throw the ball over 70 yards in the air. So he can get the ball deep to Brown. That's not the issue. The issue is his accuracy. John Brown has never been the type of guy who's going to see a ton of targets. And now everything is clouded because Robert Foster emerged as the downfield threat late in the season. All right. Over the final 7 games, he had 511 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 304 yards on balls that traveled over 20 yards in the air. That ranks 17th in the NFL. And keep in mind, he only played basically 7 games.
Reminds me of Keelan Cole a little bit, who I was excited about last year. And I like Robert Foster, but I don't know if I'm going to make that mistake again.
That's what I'm saying is, like, what Robert Foster did well for this offense, John Brown is typically who does that. And then right after signing John Brown, they signed Cole Beasley. What?
And they have Zay Jones. I don't know if Zay Jones is any worse than Cole Beasley.
I think that Zay Jones might be getting cut or traded.
Maybe. He looked fine at the end of the year.
I would agree, but he plays the slot. Robert Foster looked good at the end of the year, and then they signed John Brown. So one of these guys is going to the bench. It's not going to be one of the 2 guys they just signed to multi-year deals.
Well, it's not John Brown.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's not Cole Beasley either. You don't sign him for, I think he got 4 years, $32 million or something like that. You don't.
Oh, that is so stupid, man. He's like the 80th best wide receiver in the league.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. It was 4 years, $29 million. So it's still a lot of money. All right. So someone's going to the bench or someone's getting traded. Zay Jones is not going to be kept around his depth, a former 2nd-round pick. It's either that or they're moving on from Robert Foster and they think he was just a flash in the pan. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that even Robert Foster, when he was a starter, do you know how many times he caught more than 4 passes in a game? Once. That's exactly what it was. It was 1 time. So it's like you're relying on that big play. There's not enough consistency there. The Bills are going to be a run-first team.
4 receptions in Josh Allen's offense is really something because we're talking about someone who averaged 14 completions per game last year. Lamar Jackson, by the way, was at 13. If you think Lamar Jackson wasn't getting anything done, Josh Allen was awful through the air. His touchdown to interception rate was negative. Lamar Jackson's was 0.7 to 0.4 per game at least. I think that this is a downgrade for John Brown through the air.
I won't say it's a downgrade because Allen does have the arm and he's willing to take the shots down the field that Lamar Jackson wasn't. But the accuracy is a concern for me. The offense is a concern for me. I know a lot of people are praising the Bills for being active in free agency, and they really have been. Like, they've signed so many players. Like Frank Gore. I can't help but say that and laugh because Frank Gore and LaShawn McCoy.
Is he going to start?
I would assume.
Because they're not drafting a running back, right? They've got LaShawn McCoy and Frank. I don't know.
They still have to draft one, I think. Because they need one for next year because LaShawn McCoy, this is the final year of his deal, and Frank Gore was signed to a 1-year contract. So I would assume they're going to draft a running back in the late rounds, like maybe the 5th round. But this backfield is crazy. Chris Ivory is not young either. So, but anyways, that team is just, unfortunately, I don't have faith in that him to be consistent enough. And John Brown is a guy that's, if you want him on your fantasy team, it would be as a wide receiver 5 type where you could throw him in there in a bye week.
Even then, I'm not doing that. I'm going high upside, somebody that could actually do something.
Yeah, but he's more like that upside. He comes with weekly upside. Like John Brown does offer that because it just takes one play for him to hit 50 yards and a touchdown. And Josh Allen has.
You're right, but don't you hate starting that guy? I mean, that's Tyrell Williams, right? I never want to start that guy. I'd like to start the guy who could get hot like Equanimeous St. Brown. He's buried on the depth chart, but if he gets a chance, you want to start him every week.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest concern of it all, I think you hit it on the head in terms of the 14 completions per game, is that's got to be distributed somehow. LaShawn McCoy can catch passes out of the backfield. They did sign Tyler Kroft for whatever reason. They do have the wide receivers that we talked about in Cole Beasley, Zay Jones, and Robert Foster to go along with him. So it's where do they start going? Do we think that the Bills are all of a sudden going to start throwing the ball a lot more? I think Josh Allen would be lucky to hit 500 pass attempts this season, which would still be near the bottom of the league. And so unless he starts completing, 65% of his passes, and ups that, those completions per game, there's not going to be enough consistency. But if you find a game where it's the Bills are going to be going up against the Saints, the Saints are going to score some points, that the Bills are going to have to throw more than normal, that's a week where you might be able to put John Brown in your lineup and say, okay, let's see what I can get out of him.
Wow, no way. Holy cow. Okay. Tags, we're talking about who's going to be the starting running back for the Buffalo Bills. I think the answer is actually pretty obvious. It's Josh Allen, right? I mean, from week 11 to the end of the season, he averaged 79 rushing yards per game. That's more than everybody except Zeke, Gurley, Mixon, Carson, and Saquon Barkley. He was number 6 in the NFL in yards per game in that time.
Yeah, that's why people are talking about Josh Allen like he's a franchise quarterback. But if you break down him as a passer, he's been horrible. He's a worse version of Cam Newton is what he is, as a passer.
Cam Newton won an MVP, man.
I know he did. Cam Newton had a phenomenal.
And that's why everyone's hanging on to Josh Allen thinking, well, if he's compared to Cam Newton, then maybe he can be an MVP and lead us to a Super Bowl. I'm sorry for laughing. And here's the thing, I want to clarify this. Josh Allen seems like a really good kid. I'm rooting for him. I really am. He got so much better than I ever thought he would get in his rookie year. So maybe there's a little bit of upside there. I don't want to just trash the kid. I know it's just not nice to make fun of someone, but the idea is if you guys are thinking Josh Allen is going to carry your team to a Super Bowl, no, he's not that player. I'm sorry.
He is a good kid, and he seems like he is, and he does have a strong arm. But I've said this before, and I said this during the draft process with him, is that I don't believe accuracy can be taught with a quarterback. I think you have it or you don't. I think you can get slightly better, but we're talking 52% completion rate.
Is there really a difference between him and Tim Tebow?
Josh Allen has a much better arm.
Well, I know he has a better arm. I'm talking about in terms of expected production. I think they're the same player.
What they can offer you as a quarterback, it's not much different. I mean, I would say I'd rather take Josh Allen. I mean, that's where I draw the line because I never liked Tebow. I felt like he was a college quarterback and he benefited there. And I know he won some games in the pros, but he was not someone that I would have wanted my team to be. I wouldn't have wanted to be the quarterback of the Bears.
Was Josh Allen drafted in the major leagues?
No, I don't think so.
I feel like he should have been because he's got this cannon, man. Can you imagine if he became a pitcher?
He wouldn't hit the strike zone.
I don't know, man. It's a lot different.
That's smaller. Hey, that strike zone is smaller than wide receivers' target radius.
You're right about that, but it's a lot different throwing a baseball, man.
I know, it's different.
Yeah. All right. Deshaun Jackson traded to Philly. This is not free agent news, but I'll tell you what, we got to talk about it because Chris Godwin is happening, baby.
Chris Godwin was going to happen regardless, okay?
You're right. Chris Godwin is my guy. You can write it in ink. Our bet can be about Chris Godwin and someone else because he's my guy. I'm drafting everywhere this season.
Where are you willing to go up to get Godwin? Who are some give me some players that you're willing to draft him over right now?
Okay, so Tag, so before this happened, I actually had him a lot higher than most people in the industry, ahead of Golden Tate, Will Fuller, Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams, Marvin Jones, Larry Fitzgerald, Sammy Watkins, Tyler Boyd. I've now moved him all the way up to number 22 in my rankings. That's ahead of DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Alshon Jeffrey, Doug Baldwin, Julian Edelman, Cooper Kupp.
Wow. I like Godwin an awful lot. I don't know if some of those names in there are a bit questionable. Like, I would move him over Watkins. I think that's fair. Watkins with the foot issues, that's enough for me to lower him down.
So who's the one that really stands out to you as super questionable?
I think Alshon Jeffrey, that's super questionable. I mean, Alshon, I do believe that Deshaun Jackson is a better football signing than it is fantasy football signing, because I think Deshaun Jackson opens up an offense, and I think it's going to help Carson Wentz. I did this thing a couple years ago, and I know it still stands true. Every single quarterback that Deshaun Jackson has played with, and it is a long list of quarterbacks, by the way.
This is maybe my favorite stat. I love the stat tags.
Yep. Every single quarterback that Deshaun Jackson has played with, his splits with and without Deshaun Jackson, they're better in terms of yards per attempt with Deshaun Jackson in the lineup. And that's a significant stat for every single quarterback that he's played with. So he essentially elevates the game for quarterbacks, because I do believe that yards per attempt is one of the best gauges for how good a quarterback actually is. Completion percentage can be inflated because you check down to running backs an awful lot. You know, touchdowns, those are very hit or miss. But when you look at yards per attempt, that shows the consistency over, 500 or 600 targets in that season, consistently. And knowing that Deshaun Jackson always raises the level of quarterbacks that he plays with is just, it speaks to him as a player. I think he's been underrated for a big portion of his career. Is he, a well-rounded wide receiver that is going to completely, offer everything that someone like Julio Jones does? No. But he will change the way a team approaches your offense. He does change. He literally changes the game plan. So I think that he's going to open up things for Alshon Jeffrey. In terms of someone like Doug Baldwin, I think that's a close conversation.
Hold on. Before you get to Baldwin, I want to fight you on Jeffrey, okay? Because here's my problem with Alshon Jeffrey. In the last 4 years, he averages 815 receiving yards. Chris Godwin had 842 last year, and he started 5 games.
Yep, but you also have to remember that Bruce Arians is coming to town, and the offense is going to look different. They're not going to throw the ball as much as Dirk Cutter did. That's an important thing to remember, is that there is going to be some cutback in volume, because Tampa Bay over the last 2 seasons has thrown the ball 624 and 605 times. That's a lot.
He had 95 targets. What would you put the over-under at? 130 for Godwin this year?
I don't think I would put him that high. I think that Mike Evans is probably going to come in somewhere around that 125, 130 mark, and I think Godwin probably around the 100, 110.
All right, go ahead and move on to Doug Baldwin. What do you have to say about him?
And as for Doug Baldwin, I think that's a fair one. I think Calvin Ridley is a fair one to compare Godwin to. We're talking about, like, Baldwin. Is he the top receiver in that offense? I think it goes back and forth between him and Lockett, but Baldwin wasn't necessarily healthy the entire 2018 season. Calvin Ridley is clearly the number 2, just like Godwin is going to be in Tampa Bay. Is Ridley more talented? Is Matt Ryan going to produce more fantasy totals? I just think that people are underestimating.
Well, Ridley's kind of the number 3 behind Sanu.
I don't think so. I think Ridley, as a rookie, to produce the way he did, I think he's only going to take a step forward, and they're going to slowly fade out Sanu. Like, he's still going to play a different role, because Sanu plays the slot a lot. He has a certain role. But with Dirk Cutter coming back to Atlanta, I think it's going to tear down their run game. I think Devonta Freeman's probably going to be overdrafted, but I do think that the receivers are going to be just fine. Whereas, like, in Tampa Bay, I think you're going to see a reverse effect. Bruce Arians is, he's been an offensive guru. I do think he's going to dial back those pass attempts. I think he's going to get it closer to the 575 mark, rather than the 624 they reached last year. I think you're going to see the run game look a ton better, no matter who's back there, whether they sign someone like TJ Yeldon, even Ronald Jones. I'm not giving up on Ronald Jones because of 22 career carries under Dirk Cutter. Every single running back that's played under Dirk Cutter, including Devonta Freeman, has looked like dog crap. People wanted to write off Devonta Freeman after his rookie season when playing for Dirk Cutter. And then Cutter left. All of a sudden, Devonta Freeman was like, he was in the running for league MVP. I think DJ Moore is a good one too. Just because DJ Moore, he almost insto de facto walks into that number 1 role with Devin Funchess gone. And now it's rumored that Greg Olsen might not be playing football anymore.
Moore was the hardest one to put him over. And frankly, that might flip, because I'm a big DJ Moore fan too. I would love nothing more than to have Chris Godwin as my number 2, DJ Moore as my number 3.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe get like Amari as my number 1. I'd be fine with that, man, because Amari is really, really good.
Yeah, so with the move with Odell Beckham, how far down did you move Jarvis Landry?
Tags, I've got him as my wide receiver 30, right there in that Tyler Boyd, Larry Fitzgerald range.
That's exactly right. I have a wide receiver 30 right behind Sammy Watkins, right in front of Tyler Lockett, Tyler Boyd, and Marvin Jones.
Now, Tags, I want to go back to Calvin Ridley really quick. You said he's not the number 3, and I understand it was his rookie season. He's got more upside than Sanu. He has fewer targets per game and far fewer snaps per game than Sanu.
Oh, no, I know. And that's the thing is Sanu, like being the veteran that he was, it's like, the targets per game, he saw just 2 targets less. Like Ridley saw 92 targets in his rookie year. That's actually more than I would have thought, considering Julio was at 170. Like Atlanta did throw the ball a lot though. So that's the argument that you could use against Ridley this year is that Sanu's still there. Julio's going to get his and Atlanta's not going to be throwing the ball 615 times like they did last year because, well, I mean, they did throw the ball a lot under Cutter. Like if you go back to 2013, 2015, that era, like the Falcons were throwing the ball like over 620 times regularly. But I don't know if that happens because their defense is much better now than it was back then. And they're getting a lot of players back from injury. So it's a really interesting team to look at. But I think ultimately, it's in the same conversation between Calvin Ridley and Chris Godwin. And I think you can make the arguments for both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, Sanu played more snaps per game than Julio Jones, too. That doesn't mean that Julio Jones is the number 2. In fact, we talked about Beckham and where you have him. I've got Beckham as my number 3 wide receiver this year, behind Julio Jones at number 1, who I would still take 6th overall, and Michael Thomas.
I have my order at wide receiver this year right now. I'll dive into it as the year goes on, obviously, with the draft and everything. But Devontae Adams is my number 1. I just think he's the most stable. He comes with the highest floor.
No problem with that. They're all the top 5 are really close.
Yeah, knowing that Aaron Rodgers threw 25 touchdowns, just 25 touchdowns in 2018, and to know that Devontae Adams finished as I think he finished as the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, that's ridiculous. So Rodgers, like the new offense, I would imagine Adams' floor is very high. DeAndre Hopkins, number 2, Julio Jones, 3. Those guys you can't go wrong with. They're studs. Michael Thomas, and then you get to Odell Beckham. And then after that, it's kind of like a tier that kind of falls off where it's like you have Tyreek Hill, AJ Green, Antonio Brown,
Mike Evans, Juju, Amari Cooper. Yeah.
Yeah. Juju, Keenan Allen. Yeah. Those guys. So I think there's a clear tier up top. Those top 5 wide receivers, if you can get any of those guys. Yeah.
I agree, man. And if you're doing an auction league, I would love to get 2 of them.
Oh, if you can, I'm going to be updating my dynasty trade value chart. It'll be coming out next week. I wanted to wait till some of the chips fell in free agency, and a lot of them have. So I'll be updating that. I think I'm going to be boosting that upper tier in terms of what you should demand in a trade if you're going to be moving one of those, even in dynasty, demanding more just because there's a clear tier with those guys.
So Tags, Chris Godwin's my guy, and you said John Brown is no longer your dude. You've got to adopt someone. Do you know who it's going to be yet?
Who am I going to adopt? It could be James Washington.
Mike Williams.
Up that high, Mike Williams is phenomenal, and playing with Phillip Rivers is obviously going to help. Calvin Ridley, I've liked him, but he's never going to be number 1 over I wonder if Chris Godwin is a better all-around receiver than Mike Evans. I don't think I would necessarily go that far, but I think it's a conversation, whereas Calvin Ridley is not Julio Jones, and it's not close. So that's an argument you could use for Godwin, is that he could move closer and, close that gap between him and Mike Evans. But yeah, it's really tough. I think Dante Pettis is someone that interests me a ton.
I was going to say, if it wasn't for Chris Godwin, Dante Pettis would be my guy this year. So it sounds like we have very similar taste. You love Moore, Godwin, Pettis, James Washington. If I can get those 4 on my team, dude, my team is so good.
Yeah, I think Dante Pettis and Jimmy Garoppolo are guys that I would trade for right now. We saw what Nick Mullins did down the stretch with Kyle Shanahan. It's Jimmy Garoppolo, they haven't really given him a number 1 receiver. Dante Pettis wasn't on the field necessarily when Garoppolo was playing. So it's Kittle growing into his role, becoming a better tight end. I feel like if they get a number 1 receiver, and I think San Francisco's planning on drafting a receiver because they weren't even in on Antonio Brown. They didn't even talk about a trade for a wide receiver. They haven't signed one in free agency, which tells me I think they're drafting one. They did cut Pierre Garçon. So Dante Pettis and Marquise Goodwin, they're not done there. They're definitely not done. So they're going to add, but Pettis, he could break out this year.
He's not the favorite, obviously, to lead the league in receptions, but would it surprise you if he did?
To lead the league in receptions... it would surprise me.
Kyle Shanahan offense. You've got a receiver like Pierre Garçon, who led the lead in receptions with Kyle Shanahan. Then you've got Jimmy G, who he was, you prorate his first season with the 49ers out to a full year. 5,000 passing yards. He didn't even know the playbook yet.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing is, if they don't add anybody of significance, to take away big targets, I could see Pettis approaching 90 receptions. That's definitely a realistic possibility. And the way he's ranked right now among people, I have him at 36, wide receiver 36, and I know I'm much higher than the consensus on him.
Yeah, I've got him 35.
So it's just if you're debating between him and someone like Robbie Anderson or Cortland Sutton, I would take Dante Pettis.
And how high do you have James Washington now after the news? Because he's clearly starting in Pittsburgh, and a lot of people say he was a bust because he didn't play, but per snap, he was almost as good as Antonio Brown, and it was a really small sample size. I'm not saying he's Antonio Brown, but I'm saying he's really good.
I have him at 45 right now, but that's because I think Pittsburgh's going to do something. I don't think that they're going to go forward with just Ryan Switzer, James Washington, and Juju Smith-Schuster. I think that they're going to be adding someone else in the draft. I think they would prefer to keep Juju in the role that he's in, so they'd need to add another perimeter receiver. So it would just depend on who they added. But I think James Washington can take a major step forward in 2019. So right now I'm at wide receiver 45.
Lots of upside. He could be a top 15 wide receiver. I'm definitely not banking on that, but he's really talented, and this is a good offense for him to excel in. He's going to get the targets. I've got him right there in that range with Sterling Shepard, Will Fuller, Cortland Sutton, Curtis Samuel, Kiki QT.
Nice. Kiki QT is right ahead of him in my rankings. Marquise Goodwin's right there. Anthony Miller's right in that conversation. Yeah.
Oh, man, can you believe Devontae Parker went and signed with the Dolphins? Because I really thought, Tags, you know me. I'm with you on Devontae Parker. He's talented, and I thought if he goes to a different offense, maybe, just maybe, he could stay healthy, and he would do well, because when he's been healthy, he's actually been pretty good, but now he's back with Miami, man.
Miami never cut him, so here's the deal. Devontae Parker, a lot of people were like, why did you go back to Miami? Because they never cut him. The rumor was that they were going to cut him all along, that it was a foregone conclusion. However, it all goes back to the Adam Gase thing. Adam Gase leaving, and all of a sudden Brian Flores walks in and says, whoa, like we're not going to cut you, man. We want to actually give you an extension. We feel like you're talented. We want to give you an opportunity to succeed here. And they worked out a 2-year extension on his deal. So he is going to be there. The concern with Devontae Parker, though, is that he doesn't have a quarterback. And that's not really going to change right away, because it's like, I think that the best case scenario for Miami right now is to, grab someone like a Tyrod Taylor, like a Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick might be the best for Devontae Parker's fantasy stock, but they're going to draft a quarterback, whether that's this year or next year, they're going to. And unfortunately, there's going to be some growing pains there. It's a brand new offense. It's an offense that we don't really know much about. So Parker right now he's outside my top 50 wide receivers, even though he is the number one there in Miami, but it does tell me a lot, though, that the new coaching staff came in and said, we're not giving up on you. Like, they could have just kept him on the option, but instead they reworked and they got a 2-year extension out of him. And, so they have confidence in him.
Now he'll probably play 5 games this year, because he'll like, tweak his toe or something and be out for the whole season. But yeah, I've got him outside my top 60. He's a guy with upside that I like, kind of in the Traquan Smith type of territory. Geronimo Allison, Equinemius St. Brown, as I mentioned. Wouldn't mind drafting him at the end of drafts, but not excited about it now that he's in Miami. I mean, who's the most polished rookie quarterback? I don't think there is one that you can bring in, and you're going to say he's probably going to get 20 touchdowns.
Kyler Murray, I would assume that he's probably going to.
But not passing, probably, right? I mean, I think I'd rather...
I mean, it depends on the offense he goes to. Kingsbury, I think he would throw 20 touchdowns.
Wow, okay.
Because 20 touchdowns nowadays is different than it was back in the day. Like, the 30 touchdown threshold is like, that's the big mark, right? If you can get up to 30, it's like, okay, you're in big boy territory now. But 20, I mean, Flacco could throw 20.
Sam Darnold threw 17 last year.
And he was hurt for a couple games too. I think 3 games he missed. So he probably would have hit 20. He had a really up and down season. I know people are remembering some of the better games he had. There were some bad ones in there too. So I think Kyler Murray is someone who can get 20 touchdowns. Outside of that, no. I don't think that Dwayne Haskins is going to come in and start right away. I think he's someone that's going to take some time, ideally. But if he goes to the Giants at 6, they're going to keep him on the bench. They're going to wait until Eli implodes, and then they're going to go to him. It could be like a Trubisky scenario where it's like, they drafted him. They knew he had, just 13 games experience in college, and they ultimately have to go to him because the starting quarterback is just so bad. And Eli Manning without Odell Beckham, it's probably not going to look great. So it's probably going to happen sooner than people would expect.
All right, Tags. Carlos Hyde going to the Chiefs. I know everyone thinks this is Damian Williams' job to lose. That's what the coaching staff has said. I think Carlos Hyde is a better running back.
I know that a lot of people are going to be literally spitting out their coffee or whatever your drink is of choice right now, but I agree. I don't know what happened. I mean, there's a recency bias that's taking place with Damian Williams, that people are just drawn to him right now, and that he's such a great running back, and he played really well. Really well. But guys,
I mean, so did Jalen Samuels with the Steelers. That doesn't mean that Jalen Samuels is a stud or anything.
Exactly. Is James Conner as good as Le'Veon Bell? No, he's not. But can he perform? Can he be a fantasy stud? Yes, absolutely he can. It also helps that Damian Williams basically came in absolutely fresh. Like, Bobby, without looking, how many carries do you think that Damian Williams had by the time that he took the starting job on the season?
I'd guess 25.
He had 3 carries in the first 11 weeks.
No way.
He had 3 carries. He had 3 receptions. That's it in the first 11 weeks of the season. Then they ramped up his workload as it got down.
Everyone else's bodies are destroyed, meanwhile.
Yes, and that includes defenses, right? So Damian Williams, he's capable. He's a 3-down back. I get that. But he's not someone that you want to hand the ball off 20 times per game. He's not a Le'Veon Bell. He's not a James Conner. He's not someone that can handle 20-plus touches per game. Carlos Hyde, if this trade would have happened last offseason, or if he would have signed with the Chiefs last offseason, people would have laughed at Damian Williams and saying you're going to get cut. And now all of a sudden, because Carlos Hyde was with Cleveland first off, with Hugh Jackson. He didn't get to be there with Freddie Kitchens. He was there with Hugh Jackson, where players went to die. Okay. Then he went to Jacksonville to play behind an offensive line that has produced sub 4 yards per carry the last 3 seasons with TJ Yeldon and Leonard Fournette on the roster. They don't run the ball well. Like, they don't have the offensive line for it.
I love how you're now using TJ Yeldon, saying his name before Leonard Fournette. You love him that much.
I like TJ Yeldon. I mean, I don't like him more than Fournette, but I think that TJ Yeldon's severely underrated. I would love for him to sign with Tampa Bay and be like competition to Ronald Jones and let the best man win. I just think that someone's going to produce in that backfield. But going back to Carlos Hyde, don't write him off. I actually think this reminds me of a conversation that we had 2 years ago, Bobby, when Kareem Hunt was drafted by the Chiefs and Spencer Ware was being drafted around where Damian Williams is right now. And I said draft both of them. I am still aboard that. Right now with Damian Williams being taken around that RB13 to RB16 range and then Carlos Hyde being drafted outside the top 40 running backs, take them both. Win.
Whichever running back is starting in Andy Reid's offense is going to produce. I don't care if it's Samaje Perine or Alfred Blue eventually. They're going to produce. So yeah, you get these two because it's more than likely going to be, 14, 15 starts out of these two. And right now I would still draft Damian Williams higher. I'm not going to get him because of how high his ADP is. I've got him as my number 24 running back behind, Tariq Cohen, Jerick McKinnon, Kerryon Johnson. And I've got Carlos Hyde up at 31.
Yeah, I have Carlos Hyde right now at 35. I have Damian Williams at 16. Someone's going to have value there. But this is the exercise that I didn't even plan to talk about this in the podcast today because it's like this happened a little bit ago with Carlos Hyde signing there. But the exercise that I want is what I just brought up. Like, bring yourself back to last offseason. Okay, Carlos Hyde's coming off working very well in Kyle Shanahan's offense. Like, he played really well. He was a top 10 fantasy back. And Carlos Hyde was always known to be talented, not necessarily a great pass catcher, but competent. Okay? Imagine that someone told you Damian Williams is a free agent from Miami. Okay? The guy that literally was like a third down back for his entire career, never totaled more than like 11 carries in a game. All of a sudden someone tells you, oh, I'd rather have Damian Williams than Carlos Hyde. What would you have said to them then? Like, stop looking at literally the most recent future and taking that away. Like, Carlos Hyde sucked with Jacksonville. That's 100% clear. Did he look terrible with Cleveland? I don't think he looked terrible. I think he was in a bad situation.
Any running back would have sucked with Jacksonville except for Saquon Barkley because he's just incredible.
He's a freak. But that's what I'm saying. Like stop looking at the most recent sample and using everybody else. Like, stop doing the groupthink where it's like if you like Bobby, we're going to catch a lot of heat for saying that Carlos Hyde is more talented than Damian Williams. But that's what I'm saying is like that's because it's a groupthink exercise and people are just literally following the trend and they're going with the trend. I'm not that. I still wear Adidas tracksuits back from high school. Okay, I do. Why do I do that? Because I love them. I find them very comfortable, and now they're becoming cool again. I'm not wearing them because I'm cool. I'm doing it because I've always enjoyed them. I enjoy talented running backs, and I enjoy Andy Reid's offense. Combining Carlos Hyde and Damian Williams, do I know which way they're going to lean? I don't know. Damian Williams signed a 1-year deal with the Chiefs last offseason for, I think it was under $2 million. He wasn't highly valued in the free agent market. Carlos Hyde obviously wasn't highly valued in the free agent market, but Andy Reid churns out fantastic running backs. I want them both on my team, and if you force me to pick one and say you can only have one of them, I'd probably draft Marlon Mack, and then I'd take Carlos Hyde later in the draft rather than taking Damian Williams.
I agree, man. Totally agree. And that was the ultimate rant. Tex, I don't understand why everyone is not wearing Adidas tracksuits. Because they're so comfortable.
They are. Dude, I'm wearing a black pair of Adidas pants with orange stripes right now.
Why is everyone wearing like these holy jeans that are like hugging their butt cheeks? Like, get out of here.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, man.
All right, man. I've got one more player I really want to get into, and then we're just going to kind of do a lightning round type of thing. Devin Funchess going to the Colts. I did not think we'd be talking about Devin Funchess, but, if Terrence Williams signed with the Colts, we'd be talking about it.
Yeah, we definitely would be. I mean, because you have to look at that number 2 wide receiver role. And the reason that I think everybody should look at Devin Funchess a little bit closer is because of the money they gave him. Now, it's coming out now that it's a $10 million deal worth up to $13 million. That tells me they're going to use him, okay? Now, Deion Kane, a lot of people were excited about him, the 6th round pick.
Man, he's the biggest loser yesterday, and it sucks because I love him.
You shouldn't write him off yet. You really shouldn't. But for this year, like what the Colts just told you is that they're not relying on him in 2019. They're going to be relying on Devin Funchess. He's going to fill that big wide receiver role, and I think it's a perfect fit opposite T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton's a speedster. He can stretch the field. He plays in the slot. He moves in and out, whereas Funchess he's strictly a perimeter wide receiver, and he's been phenomenal in the red zone over his career. Bobby, check this out. Over his career, Funchess has seen 51 red zone targets. He's caught 23 of them for 16 touchdowns. Okay?
Oh, wow. That's like...
T.Y. Hilton has seen 57 red zone targets in that same period. He's caught 25 of them, 2 more, but 10 of them were touchdowns. So on 6 more targets, T.Y. Hilton caught 6 less touchdowns in the red zone. Devin Funchess is the perfect match for him. I love the signing. I still think that they could address a wide receiver in the draft. They still could use a slot receiver to knock Chester Rogers out of there, to someone that gives them a little more versatility. Maybe a Golden Tate. But
oh, that would be so sweet.
I love the signing. I don't think that Devin Funchess is going to be a yardage machine or anything, but I do think that he gives you the chance of someone think of Mike Williams last year. I think that's the type of production that you can hope for out of Devin Funchess.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And you didn't want to start Mike Williams at the beginning of the season, but, that's because we didn't know what his role would be. We know what Devin Funchess' role will be. I'll tell you what, Tags. If the Colts sign Golden Tate, I'm moving him from 36 on my big board to number 20.
I have Golden Tate even lower than that. Him waiting in free agency is not suiting him well. He's an older player. He needs to get in. He needs to work with a quarterback. We saw what it was like for him to work with new quarterbacks in Philly. It didn't work. I think he needs to sign with a team very, very soon, and he needs to get in and start doing some work. One free agent acquisition that I think we really need to hammer home before we go into the rapid fire one, though, is Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray signing with the New Orleans Saints, essentially getting rid of Mark Ingram and saying that he's walking into that role. I absolutely love this signing. Bringing my article to life. You guys can check it out on the site. I've written up all the players we've talked about. I've written up an article on them in depth, roughly 1,000 words on each one. I wrote up Latavius Murray, and my take on it at the end was that if you can get him outside of the top 25 running backs, I think you're getting somewhat of a steal in fantasy drafts.
He could be a league winner. And I'm not saying that Alvin Kamara is going to go away. I'm saying that Latavius Murray is every bit as talented as Mark Ingram. And Mark Ingram has been a top 12 running back several times in this same offense, sharing it with Alvin Kamara. So, I don't know, man. I think that Latavius Murray is going to be an absolute steal. I'd rather have him than someone like Kareem Hunt, Matt Breida, Mark Ingram himself, even James White.
Ingram, by the way, it's rumored that he's probably going to go to Baltimore, that's the landing spot, and it makes tons of sense. I think
it's a good landing spot for him.
I think it's a great fit. I mean, I don't know if they need to do it, considering they have Kenneth Dixon on the roster, but I mean, he fits. Mark Ingram fits that role. He's a downhill runner. He'll get through there. Latavius Murray's fantastic in the red zone. He should score. I would assume he'll probably score at least 8 touchdowns, whether it be rushing or receiving combined. I think he is going to walk into a role where he's going to see at least 200 carries, and that almost locks you in as a top 25 running back, as history tells us. So, yeah, whenever Latavius Murray has had the chance, he's succeeded. And, to know that the Saints walked out there on literally the second day of the legal tampering period and signed him to a 4-year deal, it tells me that he was literally in their sights the whole time. They wanted him. They didn't even have discussions with Ingram, and they like Murray. So pairing him with Alvin Kamara is fantastic. And I think you can almost pencil him in for Mark Ingram role, and Alvin Kamara stays in the role he's been because he's succeeded at it.
So where does this put Alvin Kamara for you? Because I know a lot of people were drafting him in the top 4, thinking he's going to be a workhorse now. Mark Ingram's going away. We knew better than this, right? I've got him at number 6 behind Melvin Gordon and Christian McCaffrey.
I still have him at number 4, just in front of Gordon and McCaffrey. Those guys, they're all close though. I mean, I think that's the tier that I think that I could interchange any of them, and it makes sense. It just depends on what Carolina does, who they add, because they did say they're going to add a running back to play alongside McCaffrey. So it just depends on the running back they add. How many carries is he going to take? Melvin Gordon, he's had some health concerns throughout his career. That's always a thing. Alvin Kamara has been the bill of perfect health, essentially. he doesn't rely on a lot of touches to get things done. And that's always nice, because if he does get more, that's obviously going to boost his role. But I think just knowing what you're getting out of him, knowing that he plays behind a dominant offensive line, knowing he plays for a top 6 scoring offense, there's a lot of things to like about Alvin Kamara. And I think he's a low risk guy. And that's why when we're talking about those guys that you're going to take in the first round, you want to get rid of as much risk as possible. And that's why Melvin Gordon, the only risk is injury. McCaffrey, something similar. So it's like, when you talk about those guys, that's what you want. And Latavius Murray, is he better than Mark Ingram? I don't know if I'll say better, but he's comparable. Another downhill runner. Except I think he's better in the red zone. When they get in the goal line situations, I think Latavius Murray is one of the best in the game. But as a receiver, I think Ingram was better. So it's almost a wash for Kamara. Like, I felt like he could have improved his stock a little bit, but I don't feel like this improved it. I don't think it brought it down. I just think he remained where he was for me.
All right, Tag. So here's what I want to do to close out the show. First, I'm going to talk about players who have not signed. You can pick out one of them and highlight them. And then we're going to run through a couple other skill position players that haven't signed. We'll each pick out one of them to talk about. And then we're going to run through the defensive players as well. So players who haven't signed: Golden Tate, we mentioned him. Mark Ingram. Jared Cook. I thought he was going to go to Arizona and that was going to be a good landing spot, but they just signed Charles Clay, so I don't think that's going to happen now. Maybe he goes to Jacksonville. I'm not really sure. Tevin Coleman, Tyrell Williams, and then some great defensive players like Justin Houston and Ronald Darby haven't signed yet either. Yeah,
there's some big names still left out there. A lot of the ones I've been updating, and if you guys don't know, if you were to go to FantasyPros and put in free agent tracker, we actually have, I've been tracking it. I have all the free agents.
That page is beautiful.
Yeah, I have all the, you can sort it by name, position, rating. I've actually rated every free agent, and you can actually see if they've signed, what the deal is that they've gotten, and some of the top free agents out there: Mark Ingram, Earl Thomas, Justin Houston, Ndamukong Suh, KJ Wright. Tevin Coleman's still out there. So, there's a lot of players still out there right now. A lot of the top ones have been removed from the board. But yeah, a lot of these names are going to be leaking in over the next few days. The signing on Wednesday, just don't forget, some of these free agent deals that have been agreed to, they can be taken back. If you guys remember a couple of years ago, Frank Gore had signed with the Eagles. And we heard just a few hours later that they had also signed Ryan Matthews. Next thing we know, Frank Gore is backing out of that deal. He's going to the Colts. Anthony Barr was supposed to sign with the Jets. All of a sudden, literally, the next day, he's backing out and saying he's re-signing with the Vikings. So things can change. Just be mindful of that. But as of right now, it seems like a lot of these guys are, in the places they're going to be.
All right, Teg. So a few other skill position players. Danny Amendola went to the Lions. Adam Humphries to the Titans. Man, did they pay him. Frank Gore went to the Bills. We mentioned him. Latavius Murray to the Saints. And Cordarrelle Patterson went to the Bears.
Yeah. I don't think any of these guys are going to have significant fantasy impacts. I know a lot of people were excited about Adam Humphries' landing spot, but I'm not.
He was draftable with the Bucs. None of these guys are draftable now except for Murray.
Well, correct. And part of the thing with the Bucs is that they had so much volume that we talked about earlier in the show. But Tennessee is the exact opposite of that. So Tampa Bay, again, they threw the ball 624 times. The wide receivers alone had 420 targets to be mixed up between them. Tennessee, 247 wide receiver targets last year. So this volume that people are looking for, Marcus Mariota threw the ball 432 times. That's almost 200 times less than the Bucs did. So it's like Marcus Mariota is not super talented to the point where it's like, oh, we have to throw the ball 600 times. Corey Davis is still there. He's still the top guy. Taywan Taylor is no slouch. He's a fantastic player, as a matter of fact. And Adam Humphries just fell into the wrong offense. I think that once Tennessee, if they decide to move on from Mariota and if they find a quarterback, I think that offense is set up for a long time. They have a great offensive line. They have great skill position players between Derrick Henry, Deion Lewis, and as we've talked about, the wide receivers. I just think that Marcus Mariota holds them back.
All right, man, let's move on to the defensive players. Landon Collins went to Washington. That's a big one. C.J. Mosley to the Jets. Brandon Graham re-signed with the Eagles. Anthony Barr, we talked about, spurned the Jets to re-sign with the Vikings. It was looking like the Jets were going to have a pretty decent defense. Troy Flowers went to the Lions. That was a big one as well. Malik Jackson to the Eagles. And then Quan Alexander to the 49ers. Even though he tore his ACL, they paid him dearly.
Yeah, and Quan Alexander wasn't the only addition for the 49ers. They actually traded for Dee Ford last night from the Chiefs. They gave a second-round pick next year for him. So I believe that the 49ers defense, they're turning it around by adding some of those players like Dee Ford, like I said, Quan Alexander. And then if they get Joey Bosa at number 2 in the draft, it's like that front seven all of a sudden is nasty. Their secondary is still very suspect. They still need cornerback help. I'd still say that they need help at safety, but they're changing things up front. So good for them. I mean, to get D Ford for a second round pick next year, I think that's very well. I think it's worth it because like he played lights out last year. The Chiefs defense wasn't expected to be very good.
I don't know why the Chiefs moved him.
They're changing their scheme. So, they're moving to a 4-3 scheme on defense and D Ford, I would argue that he would fit their new defense just as well. I don't know if it's a salary thing. I have no idea why the Chiefs felt, because they franchise tagged him knowing that he was going to have some trade appeal, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it has to do with the salary cap thing. Kansas City also lost Mitch Morse, their starting center, was one of the best offensive linemen available. So I don't know. The Chiefs are losing a few players here, and they signed Tyrann Mathieu, but that's about it.
Chiefs are pretty aggressive, man. They cut Justin Houston to clear up some space as well. You remember last year they went out and got Sammy Watkins? Listen to this, Tags. So they've got 2 wide receivers, right? They've got Tyreek Hill. They've got Sammy Watkins. They need a slot receiver, and Golden Tate is still sitting out there. Can you imagine if they signed him and ran those 3 out there with Patrick Mahomes?
I mean, we're starting to see teams do this, trying to build that super team. I don't know if it's necessary, to be honest. Like, Chris Conley played his role, and he was what he was. I don't know who they're going to move into that role, because they need someone that can play on the perimeter as well. And it's not to say Golden Tate necessarily can't, but he's more of like a slot receiver, because Tyreek Hill, he moves into the slot anywhere from 30 to 50% each game. So they need someone, a movable piece, or add someone else to the perimeter, because Sammy Watkins can also rotate into the slot. So it'll be interesting to see how they fill that number 3 wide receiver role, because they could technically have a role in fantasy.
The one thing I want to talk about, Tags, is Malik Jackson going to the Eagles. Not especially from the Eagles standpoint, but the Jags are losing him. This defense is falling apart. Everyone's talking about, the Jags got Nick Foles. I think they're a Super Bowl contender now. They're not going to make the playoffs. Again, this defense is nowhere near as good as it once was. And like I said, I don't think Nick Foles takes the offense forward much at all.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately starting to come around on that, knowing that they had to cut some players on defense in order to make room for Foles. I mean, not to say that Tayshaun Gibson was like, a Pro Bowl player. I think he was good. Malik Jackson, they have depth at the position. So I think they could afford it. But again, it's more about continuity, and it's like, do I think this offense is going to make the defense feel better? In terms of people gave me a lot of crap on Twitter when I said that Jacksonville still has an elite defense a couple weeks ago. And
it wasn't a great fantasy defense because they didn't get a bunch of touchdowns or anything like that, but they still had a good defense.
Well, that's what I'm saying is they allowed the 4th fewest points in the league, but tell me how you're supposed to feel as a defense. Like, I think that they were literally just burnt out. To know that if you give up 14 points, the game's over, that you're not going to win.
They scored 245 points. I mean, to put that in perspective, the Bills scored 269.
It was a terrible situation for them, and that's why I'm saying is that I don't think that you should judge their defense because all of a sudden they fell off the fantasy cliff and they started to look worse as the year went on. I hate to say it, but I think they gave up. I think that was a team that literally was just burnt out. They were sick of being on the field.
The locker room was a disaster. They were getting bad field position because of a lot of turnovers, a ton of sacks. Yeah, it was a bad season. They've still got a lot of talent, but I don't think this is a playoff team. I think the Texans and Colts are still by far the head honchos in the AFC South.
I think the Colts are the team. I mean, they need to add some secondary help. They need to get a safety alongside Malik Hooker. They need some cornerbacks, but they do have some picks in the draft. So, I mean, the Colts are the team to beat in that division right now.
Are the Colts the team to beat in the AFC?
No. I still think the Patriots are, you have to say the Patriots, the Chiefs, and now the Browns are up there too. So, like, that the AFC has, because they were like considered the weak conference last year, and with the moves that have been taking place, you have to recognize it, and it's going to be a lot closer than people think this year.
I mean, those are probably 4 of the best 6 teams in the NFL. I would put the Saints in that conversation. I would put the Rams still and the Packers in that conversation. Besides that, I would take all 4 of those teams over any NFC team.
Minnesota should have been better than they were.
You're right. And the Falcons will bounce back once they're healthy on defense.
I can't say Seattle. They're just losing too many players for me, but they're always competitive. So, but yeah, the NFL, it's definitely, this is why we love the game though. And I love the fact that there's so many trades taking place. It's like, it's something that didn't happen years ago. And I just love all this movement.
Tags, we did it. We stayed under an hour and a half. I really thought we were going to be stretching out to 5 hours and not even notice it, but I'm proud of you.
Oh man, I'm losing my voice here. I need to get some sleep.
All right, man, I got to get going too. This was a lot of fun Tons of riding to do, especially for baseball. And if you haven't checked out the Fantasy Pros Baseball Podcast, I host that as well. If you've got your fantasy draft coming up, we'll help you out with that. I want to say thanks also to the sponsor of today's show, PristineAuction.com. Go on there and find yourself some values. You are definitely going to find something you love for your cave. It's PristineAuction.com, PRISTINE auction.com. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.